Welcome to the I Didn't Know What the Fuck I Was Doing podcast.
We're your hosts, Teresa
and David.
This is the podcast with two ADHD entrepreneurs
who've made a lot of mistakes.
Each week, we discuss ways to navigate business, relationships, and health.
We also interview excellent guests who share their own personal IDKWTF stories.
Listen today so you can hear some relatable content
as we normalize uncertainty and obstacles.
Because it's important to admit that no one really knows
what the fuck they're doing. Welcome.
Hello. Welcome back.
Another episode of the IDKWTF I Was Doing podcast. I'm David B.
And I'm Teresa Merrick.
And today, what are we talking about?
We're going to talk about stress and burnout and how all you lovely people probably deal with these things that we're going to be talking about. And we're going to talk about what is it? Like, how does it show up in our body? And then throughout part 1 and part 2. So this is like a 2-part that you really want to watch or listen
like
to.
A master class, basically.
Yeah. We're going to pack a lot of information into it and hopefully give you lots of things to take away. That's my goal, is I want for us to get something out of it and for our listeners to get a lot out of it.
Perfect. All right. Well, do you want to talk about kind of like what made you want to learn about this? Because you're pretty well versed in...
Why did I want to learn about it? Actually, I mean, in general, I've done so much personal growth over the last decade. But I mean, stress is just, it's a never ending thing. It literally is constantly there. The definition of stress, I have this written down, is a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or very demanding circumstances.
Okay.
So like, that's literally the definition of stress that we're talking about today. And a friend had invited me to do this book club on this book called Burnout.
Okay.
And it's aimed at women in our society. And like the amount of knowledge I gained from it has just really made such a huge difference in my life that I love sharing with other people the ways that they can deal with their stress and their burnout, which is like extended periods of stress that are just like, you know, I mean, most people, if you say burnout, they understand what you mean.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to show the cover of the book? Or
yeah. For our viewing. So Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle by Emily and Amelia Nagoski. Like, they're sisters, and this book is badass. So I highly recommend this book. There's a ton of stuff in here. And so a lot of my statistics I got from this book. They did a lot of scientific research. So yeah, I love when there's science that backs up practical tips, because then you're like, no, this is for real. Scientifically, there's a reason this works.
Yeah. So what would you say is like the biggest difference between stress and burnout?
Well, so burnout, the definition is physical or mental collapse caused by overwork or stress.
Okay.
So like burnout is like the epitome of being stressed over a prolonged period of time.
Okay.
It's where, you know, we really can't function very well when you're in burnout. And most of us don't realize that we're in regular constant stress because we don't even think about it. We think, oh, my boss was a jerk today, whatever. You know, I know he's stressed out about his own stuff at home.
Push it down and ignore it.
Right. Or you just think, okay, he's not actually mad at me, even though he's kind of being a jerk, or maybe he's a jerk in the meeting. And then you think, I've dealt with it. But if you truly, like, if your boss was really mad and it kind of gave you that reaction of like, oh my God, we're getting yelled at, like, that's a stress response that happens in your body.
Okay.
And we can't stop that from happening.
Right.
So if you don't actually release that stress from your body, you're mentally going, okay, it's fine now. Isn't. It doesn't like release that from your body. And we don't know that. We think we're fine.
Right.
But this is also like, it's not like it's some big secret. I mean, people talk about why one of the leading problems for adult men and women is heart issues that are caused by stress. A lot of times people have heart attacks and they are stress induced. And there's a physiological reason why, which I will get into. But it's like, yeah, we all have that stress and it's important.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. That I think it's very culturally, especially in the United States. I think like we're conditioned to be stressed out all of the time and to be okay with stressful situations.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's just gotten worse and worse over the last couple of years by like a lot.
Totally. And there's like so much self-induced stress.
Yeah.
Where we put our own pressures on ourselves in different ways too. It's like society says this one thing and then we add our own, and then it's like there's just a lot. It's constantly what we should be doing or how to be better, and then there are real life scary things that our body reacts to, even if we don't consider them like scary. Like actively, you're like, oh, well, I was walking down the street and some guy cat called me. Like, okay, inherently, I don't think if you ask most women, like maybe it's scary, but most of the time, broad daylight, walking down the street, I feel like it's one of those like, oh, okay, stop looking at me. But also like there is a level of fear if you're by yourself or if there's several men and you're walking alone and maybe you're dressed up a little nicer and, like it is a fear. And it is like something to where your body then physiologically is like, oh, I'm afraid. What do I do? And our natural response is going to be fight, flight, or freeze.
Right.
Like we have an inherent mechanism, but that mechanism is something that we've had forever. And we had them since, lions were chasing us or what have you, right? Yeah. Wildlife or other people that maybe we were fighting against, rivalries, whatever, things that have been going on for a long time that have caught, we needed that. But in our society today, we don't physiologically need the response anymore, but we have it.
Absolutely.
It's ours. Yay.
So what would you say are some things that trigger stress in yourself? Like what stresses you out these days?
Well, I overthink about everything.
Okay.
I mean, I worry about my kids. My kids have been a constant source of stress since they were born. Okay. I think anybody who has children, it's very much, you're worried about their health and safety and well-being.
Okay.
From the moment, I remember when they were super infants and I'd be worried that they weren't breathing and I'd be in their room, standing over them and either if I couldn't see because their breath is so shallow when they're really little, I'd literally put my finger right by their little face and to feel really their little puffs of breath. Well, it's funny, but in that moment, that moment, it's scary.
Yeah.
But so that's, and now it's really terrible. The amount of undue stress recording this podcast for our listeners today or yesterday, there was a school shooting in Texas, an elementary school shooting.
And just 2 weeks before we had the other one as well.
Right. It's there was definitely a level of stress. So my children and my family provide a level of stress to me, just simply existing in the world. And the stress varies from, are they going to get their hearts broken as teenagers or, their feelings hurt, or are they physically going to be okay? So there's a lot of that's always kind of there.
Okay. That's interesting because that's not one I can relate to because I don't have kids, right?
Yeah.
But you're always worried about, I pet sit a lot. And so when you were saying you would check the baby, if I don't see the animals I'm pet sitting every hour, if they wander off, I freak out and I go find them.
Where are they?
Yeah.
Where are they?
What are you doing? Are you okay? Yeah. So that's really funny. So that makes sense. And I can't imagine your child.
It's a whole nother level.
And then as they get older, it's are they happy at school? Because they've got all their drama and everything's the worst for them because it's, yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things that's oh, there's definitely other stresses. I'm sure I could talk about lots of things that stress me out, but it's that's probably my most prevalent that just constantly it comes up and I have to release it into the world, or I can't, my kids do go to public school. I'm not planning to pull them out of school.
Okay.
And if I actively think about the potential things that could happen to them every day. Frankly, any of us could be in a car wreck any day. What statistically, that's the most likely thing, right? But you can't every time you get in your car, think about what if I'm in a car wreck that you would be insane. You'd be driven insane.
When I first started driving, that was my everyday.
Interesting. It hasn't been mine, but I think that's where with my kids, I'm just okay, how often do I tell them I love them? Like, but yeah. So what about you? What causes like obvious stress for you?
So what's interesting as you're kind of talking about that, it makes me think of like internal stressors, like, or external stressors. So external stressors being like worried about your kids, seeing what's going on in the news, like political, everything that's coming into you.
Yeah, that's external. That's like you have no control over a lot of that.
Absolutely. And then internal stresses, which is like, am I doing good enough? Am I going to get in trouble like at work? So that's one of mine. When I had a full-time job, like I was so stressed out because I was always worried about getting in trouble or getting fired for doing something. Like it's just that recurring thing in my head. And like, especially when I went into banking, I had no idea what I was doing at any given moment. And I like didn't even understand the computer system I was using.
Yeah.
So I had no idea. I was like, I don't know if I just lost $100,000 or not.
Oh my God.
I have no clue because I don't know what I'm doing all day, every day.
A little bit of stress.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
But they were like, you can't mess anything up. Everything's fixable.
Oh, yeah.
Like if there's anything that goes wrong, we can fix it.
I remember deadlines in the office, like and feeling stressed about deadlines and about, did I call all the people back that I needed to? Because this took longer than I thought. And there's definitely like an internal level. And for me, I think also I have struggled with self-esteem my whole life. I mean, people, when they get to know me, I'm not afraid to say that, but like also I don't project that.
Right.
Like, and so people that used to think I was really like confident, I'm not. Like I have to deal with my own like enoughness. Actually, like I've been wearing lately, You Are Enough.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good friend of mine gifted it to me, I think for like Christmas or something. And so I've been wearing it again recently because it's just like a little reminder, but I think it can absolutely feel stressful if you feel like you're not doing enough, being enough, like you're missing something, and definitely an internal monologue.
And working in retail before banking, like that was the culture that they created. So it was always like, no matter what I was doing, it was always, hey, you're not doing enough. You need to do better. Next month, you got to do better.
Do more sales, talk to more people.
Why isn't this clean? Why is this product not faced in the right spot? Like, why?
Right.
Why, right? No matter how perfect everything is, that was like, and I feel like they did that on purpose to just keep us in this level of like trying to improve and trying to like do everything possible to not get fired.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of retail has changed since then. And this was 8 years ago, but it's been the same since like the 80s, you know?
Yeah.
The upper management just wants to push as much and squeeze as much as they can. I think, so for me, just to finish answering your question, I've done a pretty good job at getting rid of most of the external stressors in my life, just because like I don't have a family. I don't have like a spouse that I live with. So it's like, I feel like I typically run away if things are getting like stressful externally. Like I don't watch the news also like as little as possible.
Oh, I stopped watching the news years ago. I mean, now I get it a ton through social media, which is hard
to get away from.
Yeah. Like, okay, I'm not going to look at all my stuff today.
Yeah. And it's crazy. And then I think the other big thing for me is money. Is always finances.
Oh, yes.
For a lot of people.
Yes. I'm glad you said that because I wasn't thinking about that off the top, but money is like, I think it's a stress for everybody.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't know anybody that has never been stressed about money.
Right.
Whether you have it, whether you don't have it, like usually there's still stress surrounding it in some way.
Yeah. And especially like in marriages, I think it's the number one cause of like divorce and breakup is finance. And so with me, I don't have to argue with someone about money. Well, I still do have to worry.
I actually think there's a caveat. I think it's like a lack of communication around finance.
Likely.
And I mean, Dan and I have definitely had like, not recently, but years back, like we definitely had a pretty big issue just with money, and we spend money differently, but I think that's everybody spends money differently or saves money differently, or finds value in certain things differently. So there's definitely still sometimes where he's like, why do you need that? And I'm like, it's $10, not that big of a deal. And then but then if it's a bigger ticket, I'm like, okay, let's think about this. And he's like, just go get it. So it's interesting how we both like think about money. Nice. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Communication is key.
Yeah.
So we talked about like what stresses us out, but how do you know when you're stressed?
Yeah. So if you're not clear that you're stressed, if you're like, my life's all right, like I feel like sometimes I'm like that. I mean, I know, like, for me, like I said, my kids is like very clear to me when I'm feeling stressed out or worried, like that's stress. But sometimes it's like life is okay. But like you said, society has left us be this way that like stress is normal.
Yeah.
So how would you know that you're stressed out? Maybe
Like, how do you personally know?
I hide out. It is like curtains drawn, Netflix and no one. There's no like Netflix and chill. It's like everybody leave me alone. I want to binge watch some ridiculous show. Yeah. Usually it's really like crappy reality TV. Like I know, but it's really like sometimes it's a good show, or sometimes it's like I'll watch like all my favorite movies. Yeah. But like I know it's really like I'm really hiding out when it's just like I'm just like I just want some drama for in somebody else's world, and I'm hiding out, and I'm like, nope, no, thank you. Okay. I also know that I like when I get overwhelmed and I'm stressed out in that way. I get very overstimulated very quick. I'm more emotional. Like I get angry or irritable much more quickly. Yeah. And I just like, I can't, my bandwidth goes down a lot.
How often are you able to catch yourself in that state? Or is it more you realize it after the fact? Like after you've been snippy all night?
It used to be after I've been snippy all night, like after I've spent the whole day, or what I noticed is I'd be fighting with myself. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm not in a very good mood right now. Like, and I don't know if I could pinpoint why, but then it's like, I'd fight with myself and be like, no, be in a good mood. There's no good reason or something. And sometimes it's been me suppressing my own emotions. So sometimes it's like, oh, I'm angry about this, or I'm sad about this. A lot of times I suppress sad a lot. But this is something I've really learned in like the last year, is that when I actually, for me, everything sounds louder. Like all of a sudden, everything that was just, if I'm sitting in the room with my kids and those being their normal volume and the TV's on and it's its normal volume, like nothing is crazy. Everything's fine. Okay. And then suddenly the exact same things, it's like, whoa, everything felt louder. Turn the TV down. Shh, be quiet. Like, and I feel like that is my signal of like, okay, I probably need a timeout. Okay. And go like hang out quiet by myself. But like,
interesting.
Yeah. How do you know when you're stressed?
I'm definitely the opposite. I'll notice like that I'm in recovery. So sometimes I'll just like sleep all day. I'll just need to just sleep, and I'll just feel like, just better after I've slept, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's interesting because I think the way I see it is that like I won't notice if a carpet is dirty. So it's like I never like think to myself, oh man, this carpet's really dirty. I should vacuum it. But after I vacuum, I'm like, that looks so much better.
Like, that carpet was really dirty. It's like bad. After the fact, you're like, oh.
Yeah. Because it's just so gradual, and it's just, I see it every day. It's kind of like that with stress for me. So it just builds and builds and builds.
Yeah.
And then something will happen and I'll just have to release it.
Yeah. No, that's actually really typical. Yeah. Like, I think a lot of us don't realize it's actually me knowing that I'm stressed is something I've taught myself actively how to notice.
Yeah. I'm getting better at that.
So. All right, well, let's take a quick little break and hear a little ad from our sponsors.
Cool.
You and me. And then we'll jump right back in.
All right. I like it.
All right.
Cool.
This is a podcast for anyone looking to improve their personal, professional, or family life.
We craft these episodes so you can learn from or relate to our experiences and opinions.
And we'd love to hear more about you. So if you're interested in connecting with us further,
as well as other like-minded individuals,
we recommend checking out our creatively named Facebook group, Colorado Entrepreneurs.
You don't have to be from Colorado or be an entrepreneur to join, but it doesn't hurt.
Just go to facebook.com/groups/Colorado Biz, that's BIZ, and send us a join request.
Or check the link in the description and show notes below.
Thanks for listening, and now back to the show.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. All right, so we're talking about burnout and stress. And something I want to say too is because we talked a little about it, and some of the ways that you might be able to start noticing for yourself is you're checked out, like hiding out from life realities. You're like, I'm going to call into work. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to sleep all day.
Yeah.
Like intrusive thoughts, worries, obsessing over something, like the same thing, even if you kind of know it's out of your control or whatever the case might be.
Yeah. Another one is I'll go into like executive dysfunction and just not be able to do anything. Like I'll want to do something and I just can't.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's for anyone who deals with executive dysfunction.
Yeah.
Which can be anyone. Like ADHD, it's a common thing for us to deal with, but like anybody can deal with executive dysfunction and like feel like they can't get something done that they normally can.
And that they want to get done.
Totally. Yeah, that they want to do. It feels like you're stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say in your body, there are physical ways. Like sometimes people are like low level sick.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you just get like a cold that won't go away, or you have like an injury, like that just isn't healing all the way. Or another like way to know, oh, I was way super stressed is like everything you went on crazy overdrive for a while and then you get a really bad cold. Like you're going and going, or you take a vacation and you get a cold and you're like, what the heck, man?
Yeah.
But it's like you didn't allow yourself time to rest and heal and like you've been under so much stress.
Yeah.
Your body physically will tell you because stress is actually extremely physiological. Like stress is dealing with a real or a perceived threat.
Okay.
Is what it is. Like that's what ultimately physiologically, like I said, it's like if you're being chased by an angry hippo,
Right.
like you got to do something about it.
And I think the key that you said is perceived threat as well.
Yes.
So even if you think something is going to be a threat,
Right.
whether it's like that fear of getting fired, even if it's not.
Right. Your boss is in a bad mood and just like kind of grumpy at everybody. And you're like, oh, I know I did that report. Like, wasn't my best work or like, and then you're stressed about that. Even if your boss didn't say that, but you're like, oh, boss is on a rampage.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a perceived threat to your well-being, to your finances, to your security in life. If
Right.
that's your job. Right.
Yeah.
So there's a threat, whether it's legit, something chasing after you, or
Just in your head.
right.
Yeah.
And most of the threats anymore in our society are in our head.
Absolutely.
Right. And sometimes there is absolute real threat.
Yeah.
Like, and so I don't want to dismiss anybody's valid actual threats in their lives because yes, those are very real.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons. But like I said, fight, flight, or freeze. That's what our body is made to do.
Okay.
Fight and flight both signal to our body like we're doing something physiologically and physically. So the easiest way to release stress from your body is physical activity. But that's because if you think about it, okay, if there's an angry animal chasing you, right?
Right.
If you got a spear or whatever weapons you might have, and this is how then you turn around, maybe you fight the animal, right? You're physically doing something. Your body is ready for that.
Yeah.
Like, so your senses are heightened. Your heart rate increases. You've got all these different hormones. Hormones. Yeah. Yeah. You've got endorphins. You've got cortisol. You've got all sorts of stuff. On the flip side, because those are things we feel when we're like afraid or dealing with that stuff, or like some guy you're driving and some guy almost steps in front of you. That happened to me like a week ago. It was like, and he was just so nonchalant. Oh, but man, my adrenaline was pumping afterwards. Like I was, I was shaking, like, cause I was just like, oh my gosh, like, don't be so cavalier walking out in front of like a 50-mile-per-hour road.
Right.
Like, but on the other side of that, our physiological response literally is other systems shut down. They slow down. Like our digestive system isn't working properly. Our reproductive system isn't working properly. Our immune system isn't working properly. Like all these things slow down because it's like, that's not what's important in that moment. If I'm fighting a lion, right? Like I need all my senses to be right. Like your senses are heightened too. You hear things better. You see things better. Like everything is. And that's great for survival or for flight for that matter. If you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm prepared to fight like a lion cub. I'm not prepared to fight a giant hippo. Like I better run. Like again, you're physically doing something. And then after you run and your heart is going and you finally get away and you're able to slow down, your body has gone through its cycle because now, okay, if I'm no longer like physically doing something, that hippo must not be a threat currently.
Right.
So I'm safe.
Okay.
I don't know why I picked a hippo. My son.
Those are pretty terrifying.
No, they are. My son would be really proud because hippos are like the number one or like they're up really high on the list of like deaths in Africa. Yeah. Like they're actually extremely dangerous.
You know what they do? They're so.
I want to know.
They're so heavy. So if they're trying to chase you in the water, they actually run on the bottom of the river and then they'll jump up and try and get you, and then sink down, and then they'll run, and then they jump up with their big old teeth. Oh man,
like
that's
no,
crazy.
They're very powerful, and they're
tanks.
They definitely are aggressive. That's the word I was looking for. They're aggressive wild animals.
Yeah.
In the wild. Like, you think about it, you're at the zoo. They're in this little tiny pen, and they're just normally hanging in the water. So you're just like, that's just a really big animal.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's a big killing machine is what it is.
Absolutely is. Like, do not want to start a fight with a hippo. No hippo fighting.
Yeah, no hippo.
For our listeners who
advice of the day.
Plan to number one takeaway from this podcast, don't fight hippos.
No matter how much you want to.
You don't really want to run away from them either. You probably just want to like climb a really big tree or something. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. But then the other thing that happens to us that actually I have dealt with personally is freeze. And a lot of people don't realize, like, when they can't do anything, like there are accounts where people are like attacked and they don't fight back. They don't scream. They don't do anything. Sometimes people are like, why didn't you fight back? But literally their body has shut down.
And I can see this in the workplace too, where like maybe you have like an aggressive coworker or like a terrible boss, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's like you could do something, like you could send an email or you could do an HR complaint, but a lot of people don't.
No, and they just shut down. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's like people on the outside, even the people who freeze themselves, because you can see it in someone else. You can go, but couldn't you have done something? Mm-hmm. And the truth is, physiologically, sometimes we have that response that it's literally like, this example was given in the Burnout book, which I love. They talk about like a lion with a gazelle, and the gazelle may be running, but then the lion catches it. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't kill it, but then the gazelle freezes.
Right.
And, the lion lays it there and is like, okay, she's going to go get her cubs now to come feast on this gazelle that she just caught, right? Because her cubs weren't in the hunt. And the gazelle kind of slowly shakes out of it, like shivers and like has this bodily reaction when the lion's not there and is able to like get up and walk away.
Or I've seen it like it's caught and then it'll go limp until it gets its chance to like do an explosive move to try and get away.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. But it is truly a physiological, like self-preservation.
Yeah.
Physical response.
What's interesting too is in like the sales world, if you need to make like a sales call, a lot of people just won't because it's the stress of like what's going to happen when I pick up that phone and dial.
Seriously, I used to have so much anxiety about calling people, and like I hated doing it. I hated it so much, and I couldn't figure out why. But it was like the anxiety of like, what are they going to say? Even though I was good at my job, I knew what I was doing.
Or they want exactly what you're offering them, and it's just people freeze, or they'll run away and do another task. So they'll occupy themselves with something that's not important or not like productive because they're running away from the thing that they actually want to do.
Well, and there is something, and I was going to talk about this probably in part 2 a little bit, because there is something to, it's not always running away. Like if you're struggling with something and you're like, you know what, I'm going to go like take a little break.
That's different. Absolutely.
Right. So I just want to delineate that there's a difference between like actively avoiding and like really not doing something.
Yeah.
And because of like the fear, the anxiety, the stress.
Yeah.
And versus where it's like, like maybe I'm trying to write this email and I'm like, it's just not coming out the way I want it. Or I'm like, So sometimes it's like, go do something else. Like, and it may be like, don't work at all. Go, if you're at your home office, go do a load of laundry, like something that's like easy or mindless or whatever.
Yeah.
That gives your brain some time to like work on it in the background while you're not actively thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And those kinds of breaks are really good for us.
Absolutely.
And good for our stress level. But totally, there absolutely is the like, I should be making calls. I think my baseboards are dirty.
Exactly. Another one that's interesting on the fight side, I don't know if you've ever experienced as a coach, is that like I'll have clients that say, okay, here's my goal. We'll lay out the plan. We all agree to the plan, but that gets to a point where something's uncomfortable. It's outside of their comfort zone that they haven't done before. Mm-hmm. And then they want to, and the same thing will happen. They'll flight or freeze. They'll either want to do something else, they just won't do it. Or when they fight back, they're like, this is stupid. That's not going to work. There's no way that's going to happen. And it's like, here's all of the examples of how it does work, but it's stressful. And so that stress comes up and they have that response. And it's interesting how people react. And then I feel like the fight is the hardest one when they just have their defense up and they want to argue. And it's just that it's a defense mechanism. And it's just that they're scared to take that next action.
Oh, yeah. Or even in personal life.
Yeah.
Like, I know I have always struggled with getting really defensive, but I think it's because I have.
Use that.
I have.
Yeah.
Don't ask Dan. Dan. Shh. Like, no, I mean, I'm extremely defensive, but it's usually because I think it's because of my perfectionism. And it, which is a self-imposed stress, which is interesting because I didn't bring that up, but it's like, needing to like get everything right and show up a certain way and have the house look right or have the relationship look right or be right or whatever the hell right is anyway.
Which is made up in your own head.
Totally. Absolutely. 100%. Nobody gave me this like handout that said, this is how to do life, Teresa. I mean, God, some of us would like that, right? Like, give me a handout and tell me how to do life.
Yeah.
How to be successful in your life. Like, no, but I definitely have been very defensive. It's interesting because I feel like I use all of those, but yeah, the fight, like, absolutely. Like, I don't.
Is that your number one, you think?
I think it depends on the stress, but it's generally fight or freeze.
Okay.
I think I run-ish.
Yeah.
From certain things, but I don't know. It's like in my regular everyday life, like it either feels rough and combative, or like I just check out.
Interesting. I think I'm flight first and probably freeze second. I have no interest in fighting with anyone about anything.
It's so funny. Like you and Dan are like each other in so many ways. Like seriously, I'm like, when is your birthday, David?
I'm Pisces.
Okay, you're a Pisces. I'm like, Dan's a Leo. So I was just curious.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
It's just funny because it's like, if someone cares enough to fight with me, I'm like, just have it. Do it your way.
See, that's Dan. Dan he just can't stand fighting. He does not want to be at opposition with anyone. He's like, nope. And if I say nothing, then I'm not perpetuating the fight. But for me, it's like, if you say nothing, you are perpetuating the fight.
You're like, argue with me so I can be right.
I am very confrontational. For someone who wants to be liked by everyone, like, it's super strange.
Yeah.
Like, it really, really is. And also someone who has, like, definitely the rejection sensitive dysphoria. Like, I get that really crazy. But it's like, my natural personality, I don't mind being confrontational.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's works to my advantage. Sometimes it really, really doesn't. So,
all right. And so we've talked a lot about like just general stress and like how it can show up in our life.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, we talked a little bit about burnout, but so what exactly like is the main difference between burnout? Like, so
well, stress is like every day we're going to have stress because all the things we talked about is stuff that happens on a daily basis, things we deal with in our lives that cause this response in our body, whether we're aware of it or not. And burnout is literally when you physically can no longer take it anymore. You mentally can no longer take it anymore. It doesn't have to be both. It can be either. But like there is like a full on collapse of like, I cannot function in this way. Like needing to sleep for like 3 days or something, or like mentally being like, I cannot, like I can't. It's not like I'm checking out and trying to hide out a little bit, but like I really just can't deal with anything.
Okay.
It's like a big struggle.
I've heard, so I think it was on TikTok, honestly, but I heard it takes like 2 to 3 years to fully recover from burnout.
Well, so I don't know that there's a specific time. And yes, it takes a recovery to recover from burnout because our daily stresses continuously compile in our bodies. Like it doesn't just go away. Okay. Like just working out for an hour once the whole week isn't going to release all the stress that we compiled throughout the whole week.
Okay.
So, and different people handle stress differently. We feel it differently. We're all different people. So while yes, there's science to how our bodies work, we're all different. Okay. So it does take time. And so if you're really high under a lot of stress, then yeah, there is a way to start working through it. And that's really, I think, what we're going to talk about in the next part of this series is like all the ways to release stress. But
Okay.
The number one way that I mentioned a little while ago is physically moving your body.
Okay.
Simply because of the reasons that we talked about. Like
Yeah.
when you're fighting a hippo or running from a hippo, you physically are like allowing that to move through your body.
Yeah.
So your body physiologically is dealing with all of the extra hormones, and it's dealing with your raised heart rate, and it's using all that stuff that it's given you in that scary place.
Okay.
So when you're not using that up, it's just like causing your body, and then your body isn't, your digestive tract isn't coming back on, your reproductive tract isn't coming back on, your immune system isn't functioning properly.
Yeah.
And it affects that. So the most simple solution is daily exercise. And I know, I don't even want to hear that. Like
the joke is go for a stupid walk for your stupid mental health.
Seriously.
Stupid.
It's stupid. But like, yeah, they say 20 to 60 minutes can help relieve from every day. But once most of us have that like built up, like one workout isn't necessarily going to make you feel better, but like also do your favorite thing, turn on some music, dance for 10 minutes of it.
Yeah.
Or, whatever it is, go swimming, go for a hike, like just get your body physically, your heart pumping.
Play some Beat Saber in your Oculus.
Play some Beat Saber.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Where it's at.
That stuff is a workout. I need a Beat Saber. All right, guys. So seriously, join us for the part 2, because there's going to be like a ton more about like how to manage this stress that we all have all the time. And I want you to benefit from it. See you next time.
Bye guys. Thank you for listening. This has been part 1 of our 2-part series on this topic.
The second episode will be out this coming Thursday, if it's not out already.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, please consider liking, subscribing, and or reviewing us on wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Also, if there's someone you know who clearly doesn't know what the fuck they're doing and would benefit from this topic, please hit that share button and send them this episode.
Let's normalize the feeling of uncertainty,
asking for help, and admitting that we don't know
what the fuck we're doing either.